So Thanatos drive is as old as existence. It's the urge to self-destruction. It's the urge to cease to exist forever and ever. So today's mainstream materialism assumes that this is what's going to happen to you because they assume that you have a soul that is moving and that eventually is destroyed once its carrying vessel is destroyed. Under a physicalist view, there is no death because there is nothing traveling, there is nothing extra. Experiences are identical to all the physical configurations specifying those experiences. And those physical configurations are just located where they are. Therefore, there is no death in the sense of ceasing to exist forever. So, within this framework, how can agents embedded within such a system take this into account in their decision making? Is there liberation? This is a question that arises in many people. Or is there something close to it, at least? If experience is impossible to destroy, because by definition experience is just what it is, it's just where it is located, and it must be located somewhere, then is it possible to escape? This is a question asked in Buddhism. The Buddha also realized that the view of nihilism, the view of destruction upon death of the body was wrong because, again, it wasn't a monist view. It assumed that you had a soul. The Buddha did not assume that you had a soul. He thought you were just part of a causal contraption with moving parts, and experience is just where it is. There are no fundamental travelers in it all. And so that's a far more accurate physicalist view. And it's a shame that it seems that in the West, people are still Christian. Whether you're an atheist or not, you still essentially hold Christian metaphysics. You believe that you have a soul. And that causes you to think that you will be destroyed forever and ever. And you're not. And that happens to be like too good to be true for some people. It's like, wow, really? And for others, it's even more scary than the idea of just slipping away into nothingness. And so then they look for an exit. How can I exit this contraption? And the way to do so is that you can't, obviously, by definition, but you could get to good places. You could get to good places. You could get to heavens, and you could get to what in Buddhism is called the unconditioned state, which some equate with nirvana. What is the unconditioned state? The unconditioned state, I would interpret it as the simplest possible conscious experience in the universe. If we had all monads, all slices of experience that are possible, there is one that is most shared by all across the universe, the one that is most common. And that would necessarily be the most simple one, because it involves the simplest possible binding of information into a conscious experience. And therefore, that which is the most common would be the most shared. When you are in such an experience, you would have no substrate dependent information being coded. So in other words, there is no body, There is no sights, no specifics. It's just awareness itself. It's the simplest possible awareness. And so, how do you get to that? Well, you could get there with psychedelics. You could get there by being on the very verge of death. Or you could get there by meditating for a really, really long time and hopefully getting it. A lot of people, obviously, by the nature of such an experience, you wouldn't actually be able to report back on it. But you would just have the notion that something there exists, something which you can't explain, which was just raw awareness. So I increasingly realized that the opposition and the resistance to empty individualism / open individualism is an incapacity for abstract thought. So we are the type of animal which has, at least on Earth, the highest capacity for abstract thought, but there is variation within the human population. And so, for example, there are people for whom this statement is nonsensical. Like, they cannot fundamentally understand where this comes from. Like, how is a shape which looks very different, tangent of x, the same as these waves divided? Like, they're trying to look for these squiggly lines in here. How could this be equal to this? Division is trying to fit this into this. And whenever you try to fit this into this, you get this. And these are both components, therefore, hiding within the very structure of this, within the very nature of this. And this is there. This is just what it is. But for some people, this is already magic. They don't believe this. They think this must be fiction, this must be untrue, because after all, no matter how close they look at it, they can't find the squiggly lines. And that's the problem, you know. And then we bring in the actual Maclaurin series expansion of what these actually correspond to, and then you have x minus x cubed over 3 factorial plus ... Then so you're getting more terms, and here you have x squared over 2 factorial plus ... And so then not only was this equivalent to this, but then this further contains a whole bunch of other shapes. Like, what is x? X is that line that just goes like that. X cubed divided by something is going to give you that. X squared was a parabola. 1 is just 1. It's a constant. And so you're adding more and more shapes, and somehow they're all contained. They were all contained in this, and then this was all contained in this. There are people who cannot conceive of this, and therefore think of these as experiences. This is one experience, so binding results somewhere in the universe into a single experience. This is another experience, another experience, another experience. Whether you take it at binding as physically true or some sort of fuzzy illusion of some kind, the case is there are all kinds of experiences wherever they're occurring from their own location. And it is not inconsistent to say that therefore you are all experiences, because they're all just occurring from where they're occurring. We could say you're this, and within the sum me, I contain every possible experience, but from each location, I am different. You know, it's like this thing looks way different than this one, and this one looks way different than this one. It's clearly not the same. I am not the same experience as whatever was happening 5 seconds ago. I'm not the same experience as whatever else, right? But ultimately, in the ultimate sense, I am necessarily embedded within the entire structure, within the entire thing. And this is by necessity, because you can't be a non-experience which is not part of the contraption of existence. You have to be within the contraption of existence to even be. Like, the point is, what is just what it is. It's nothing more. There was never anyone traveling among these paths. There was ultimately only all these shapes just inscribed within this, hidden within this. And if you could stand outside of it all, you wouldn't be able to see. The only way to really see is by being inside of it. And by being inside of it, you cannot realize your true nature.